In 1940, the German military distributed over 35 million tablets of methamphetamine to its soldiers. They called it Pervitin. The soldiers called it Panzerschokolade, tank chocolate. It kept them awake for days. It made them fearless. It fueled the Blitzkrieg that conquered Europe. Adolf Hitler himself took methamphetamine injections daily, multiple times per day by the end. His personal physician, Theodor Morell, gave him a drug cocktail that included meth, cocaine, opiates, and steroids. Hitler was a hardcore drug addict, running a country while tweaking on meth. And when Germany lost the war, the formula for methamphetamine went global. Japanese chemists refined it. American bikers manufactured it. Mexican cartels industrialized it. And now it's destroying communities across the United States at a scale that makes the crack epidemic look minor. Methamphetamine kills approximately 32,000 Americans per year as of 2024. That number has tripled since 2015. It's the dominant drug in rural America. It's destroying small towns. It's creating a generation of brain-damaged users and abandoned children. And it started as a Nazi super soldier drug designed to create an army that didn't need sleep. This is the complete history of methamphetamine, the Nazi invention that became a global epidemic, the drug that promised productivity and delivered psychosis, the chemical that's currently winning the war on drugs, and it's only getting worse. Methamphetamine is synthetic. It doesn't grow like coca or opium poppies. It's manufactured in labs using chemicals. That makes its history shorter than most drugs. It was only invented in the 20th century. The base compound, amphetamine, was first synthesized in 1887 by Romanian chemist Lazar Edeleanu. He was looking for medical applications. He found a stimulant that increased alertness and suppressed appetite. But it wasn't particularly potent, and medical science didn't know what to do with it yet. In 1919, Japanese chemist Akira Ogata synthesized methamphetamine, a more powerful version of amphetamine. The meth modification made it cross the blood-brain barrier more easily. That meant faster effects, stronger high, more addiction potential. But it still wasn't commercially produced. It was just a chemical formula sitting in research papers. That changed in the 1930s, when pharmaceutical companies started looking for stimulant drugs to treat depression, narcolepsy, and obesity. Amphetamine was marketed as Benzedrine in 1933. It came in inhalers for asthma and nasal congestion. People quickly figured out they could crack open the inhalers, extract the amphetamine-soaked strips, and eat them for a powerful high. Methamphetamine followed in 1938. The German pharmaceutical company Temmler marketed it as Pervitin, an over-the-counter drug for alertness, mood enhancement, and weight loss. You could buy it at pharmacies. Housewives used it for energy. Students used it to study. Workers used it to stay productive. It was legal, normalized, and everywhere in Germany. Then World War II started, and the German military realized Pervitin could create super soldiers. In 1939, the Wehrmacht began distributing Pervitin to troops. The drug allowed soldiers to stay awake and alert for days without sleep. It suppressed fear. It increased aggression. It eliminated fatigue. Soldiers on Pervitin could march for 50 hours straight without rest. The Blitzkrieg, Germany's lightning-fast invasion strategy, was partially fueled by methamphetamine. Panzer divisions advanced so quickly that Allied forces couldn't respond. Tank crews stayed awake for days. Pilots flew multiple missions without sleep. Infantry units marched non-stop. Between April and July 1940, the German military ordered 35 million tablets of Pervitin. That's enough to give every soldier multiple doses daily for months. This wasn't occasional use. This was systematic military drug distribution, and it worked. Initially, Germany conquered Poland in weeks. France fell in 6 weeks. The speed and aggression of German forces stunned the world. But there were problems. Soldiers developed severe addiction. Withdrawal caused depression, exhaustion, and psychosis. Performance declined after prolonged use. Troops became erratic and violent. Commanders reported discipline problems, soldiers unable to sleep even when they needed to, paranoid, aggressive toward each other. By 1941, the German military began restricting Pervitin use, but the damage was done. Millions of German soldiers were addicted. The drug was too embedded in military operations to fully remove. And Hitler himself was the biggest meth addict in Germany. Adolf Hitler's personal physician, Dr. Theodor Morell, was a quack who treated Hitler with increasingly insane drug cocktails. Starting in 1941, Morell began giving Hitler daily injections of methamphetamine. He called it Vitamoltin. It was meth. By 1944 to 45, Hitler was receiving multiple meth injections per day. He was also taking cocaine, opiates, barbiturates, testosterone, and animal hormones. His health deteriorated visibly. He developed tremors, paranoia, and erratic behavior. His military decisions became increasingly irrational. Historical analysis suggests Hitler's drug addiction contributed to catastrophic military mistakes. His insistence on holding Stalingrad despite tactical impossibility, his refusal to retreat from losing positions, his paranoid purges of competent generals, his disconnection from reality. Hitler was making war decisions while severely addicted to methamphetamine and experiencing stimulant psychosis. That's not speculation. His medical records confirm daily meth injections for years. Germany wasn't the only country using methamphetamine in World War II. Japan distributed it widely to soldiers, factory workers, and kamikaze pilots. Japanese methamphetamine was called Philopon or shabu. The military gave it to soldiers to increase endurance and reduce fear. Kamikaze pilots took massive doses before suicide missions to suppress their survival instincts and ensure they'd complete the attack. Japanese factories gave methamphetamine to workers to increase productivity. The entire wartime economy ran partially on meth. Workers stayed awake longer. Productivity increased. Output rose. After Japan surrendered in 1945, military stockpiles of methamphetamine flooded the civilian market. Millions of doses suddenly available. No regulation, no control. Japan experienced its first major meth epidemic from 1945 to 1957. Approximately 2 million Japanese people became addicted to military surplus methamphetamine. The Japanese government eventually cracked down hard. They criminalized possession, increased penalties, and conducted mass arrests. By 1958, they'd largely controlled the epidemic, but it took over a decade of aggressive enforcement. Meanwhile, American soldiers were using amphetamines extensively during World War II. The US military distributed Benzedrine, amphetamine, not methamphetamine, to troops. American bomber crews used it for long missions. Infantry used it to stay alert. It was considered essential military equipment. After the war, millions of American veterans returned home with amphetamine habits. The pharmaceutical industry was happy to supply them. Amphetamine and methamphetamine were prescribed legally for weight loss, depression, and narcolepsy throughout the 1950s and 60s. Housewives used diet pills, many of which contained amphetamines. Truck drivers used them to stay awake on long hauls. Students used them to study. Athletes used them for performance enhancement. Methamphetamine was legal, prescribed, and socially acceptable in post-war America. You could get a prescription from your doctor and pick it up at the pharmacy. That started changing in the 1960s as the dangers became obvious. By the 1960s, doctors and researchers were documenting severe problems with amphetamine and methamphetamine use. Users were developing psychosis, paranoia, hallucinations, and severe addiction. People were dying from overdoses and heart problems. In 1971, methamphetamine was classified as a Schedule II controlled substance under the Controlled Substances Act. That meant it had medical uses but high abuse potential. Prescriptions became restricted. Manufacturing became regulated. Legal pharmaceutical methamphetamine disappeared from most markets. Desoxin, prescription methamphetamine, is still technically available for severe ADHD and obesity, but it's rarely prescribed. But making meth illegal didn't stop demand. It just moved production to illegal labs. And that's when biker gangs entered the picture. In the 1960s and 70s, outlaw motorcycle gangs, particularly the Hells Angels, began manufacturing methamphetamine in illegal labs. They controlled production and distribution across the American West. Why bikers? Several reasons. They had the chemistry knowledge. Many members were Vietnam veterans with military training. They had the networks. Motorcycle clubs operated across state lines. They had the market, rural areas with limited drug access. And they had the attitude. Biker culture valued aggression and risk-taking that meth enhanced. Biker meth was crude but effective. They cooked it in makeshift labs, using ephedrine or pseudoephedrine extracted from over-the-counter cold medications. The process was dangerous. Explosions and fires were common. The product was impure and contaminated, but it worked, and demand was massive. By the 1980s, biker gangs controlled most of the American meth market. They manufactured in rural areas where law enforcement was limited. They sold to truckers, laborers, and rural communities. Meth became the drug of rural white America. Unlike crack cocaine, which was concentrated in urban black communities, the quality was terrible. Biker meth was full of toxic byproducts and contaminants. Users experienced severe health problems, tooth decay, skin sores, cognitive damage, but it was cheap and kept people awake for days. In rural areas, with few economic opportunities and lots of manual labor, that was valuable. Then in the 1990s, the recipe improved and everything got worse. In the 1990s, Mexican drug cartels began manufacturing methamphetamine at industrial scale. They had better chemistry knowledge, larger production facilities, and more efficient distribution networks than biker gangs. Mexican cartels, particularly the Sinaloa cartel, hired professional chemists to refine meth production. They developed higher purity products. They built large-scale labs capable of producing hundreds of pounds per batch. They smuggled precursor chemicals from China and India. The result was cheaper, purer, more potent methamphetamine flooding American markets. Biker gangs couldn't compete with cartel production capacity and quality. By the 2000s, Mexican cartels controlled most of the US meth supply, and they used a new method that made meth even more dangerous: the phenylacetone, P2P, method. Traditional meth production used pseudoephedrine from cold medications. In 2005, the US passed the Combat Methamphetamine Epidemic Act, restricting pseudoephedrine sales. You had to show ID, quantities were limited, purchases were tracked. That should have reduced meth production. Instead, cartels adapted. They switched to the P2P method, which doesn't require pseudoephedrine. It uses different precursor chemicals that weren't regulated. P2P meth is chemically different from pseudoephedrine meth. It produces a different form of the drug that's more unpredictable. Users report more paranoia, more hallucinations, more psychosis. The high is less euphoric and more aggressive. P2P meth is what's flooding American markets now. It's cheaper to produce, easier to smuggle, and causes more severe mental health damage than previous versions. And the purity has skyrocketed. In 2007, the average meth seizure was about 40% pure. By 2020, it was over 95% pure. Users are getting pharmaceutical-grade methamphetamine at street prices. That means stronger addiction, faster tolerance, worse health outcomes. The current methamphetamine crisis in America is worse than the crack epidemic of the 1980s. And it's not even close. The crack epidemic killed about 5,000 Americans per year at its peak. Methamphetamine is killing over 32,000 per year now. And that number keeps rising. In 2010, about 500,000 Americans used methamphetamine regularly. By 2020, that number was 2.6 million. But those are conservative estimates, based on surveys and treatment admissions. The actual number is likely higher. Many rural meth users never seek treatment. Many die before they're counted. The true scale of addiction is probably closer to 4 to 5 million Americans. Overdose deaths involving methamphetamine have tripled since 2015. In 2023, meth was involved in approximately 32,000 deaths. More than heroin, more than cocaine, more than prescription opioids. And unlike the opioid epidemic, which has started to plateau in some areas, meth deaths are still accelerating. Every year sets a new record. The meth epidemic is concentrated in rural America and the West. States like Montana, Wyoming, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and New Mexico have the highest per capita meth use, but it's spreading everywhere. States that never had meth problems, like Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania, are now seeing massive increases. The geographic spread is relentless. Small towns are devastated. Counties with populations under 50,000 have meth overdose rates 50% higher than urban areas. Some rural counties have lost an entire generation to meth addiction. In places like rural Oklahoma and Montana, it's hard to find a family that hasn't been touched by meth. Everyone knows someone who's addicted, in prison, or dead from meth. Why rural America? Several factors working together create a perfect storm. Economic decline, manufacturing jobs disappeared, farming became industrialized, coal mines closed. The economic opportunities that sustained rural communities for generations vanished. Young people who stayed faced poverty, underemployment, and hopelessness. Meth provided escape and energy to work multiple low-wage jobs. geographic isolation, fewer treatment resources, and medical facilities. If you're addicted to meth in rural Montana, the nearest addiction treatment center might be 200 miles away. The nearest hospital might be 50 miles. The nearest mental health professional might not exist at all. You're on your own, and meth dealers are everywhere. Cultural factors. Meth use is less stigmatized than in urban areas. In many rural communities, meth is normalized. It's not seen as a hard drug like heroin. It's the drug that helps you work longer hours, stay alert during night shifts, lose weight. The social barriers to trying meth are lower. And once you're addicted, the shame of seeking help is higher. Rural communities value self-reliance. Admitting you need help with addiction feels like failure. And supply. Mexican cartels flood rural areas with cheap meth because competition is lower than in cities. Urban drug markets are crowded and dangerous. Law enforcement is stronger. Prices are competitive. Rural markets are easier. Less competition from other dealers. Less police presence. Higher profit margins. Cartels can sell lower quality product or mark up prices because users have no alternatives. The result is entire rural regions saturated with methamphetamine. It's easier to buy meth in some rural towns than to buy fresh produce. The infrastructure of drug dealing is more reliable than the infrastructure of legitimate commerce. Amazon might not deliver to your rural address, but meth dealers will. The visible effects are horrific. Meth mouth, severe tooth decay caused by dry mouth, teeth grinding, and poor hygiene. Meth sores, skin picking, and infections from impurities and hallucinations of bugs under the skin. Cognitive damage, memory loss, paranoia, inability to concentrate, psychosis, hallucinations, violent behavior, disconnection from reality. Chronic meth users often develop permanent brain damage. MRI scans show reduced gray matter in areas controlling judgment, decision-making, and emotion regulation. The damage can persist years after quitting. Some users never fully recover cognitive function. And then there are the children. Meth addiction destroys families. Parents neglect or abandon children. Foster care systems in meth-heavy states are overwhelmed. Children born to meth using mothers experience developmental delays and behavioral problems. In states like Montana and Oklahoma, meth is the primary reason children are removed from homes. The foster care crisis in rural America is directly linked to methamphetamine addiction. The current meth crisis has a unique feature that makes it even more dangerous. Combination with fentanyl. Mexican cartels have started mixing fentanyl into methamphetamine. This creates a speedball effect, stimulant plus opioid. Users often don't know they're taking fentanyl. They think they're only using meth. Then they overdose from opioid toxicity. Fentanyl-laced meth is particularly deadly because the effects counteract each other. Meth increases heart rate and respiration. Fentanyl suppresses breathing and heart rate. Users feel the meth keeping them awake and assume they're fine, but the fentanyl is killing them slowly. By the time they realize something's wrong, they're in respiratory failure. This combination has driven the recent spike in meth-related deaths. In 2015, about 4,500 people died from meth overdoses. In 2023, it was 32,000. Most of that increase is from fentanyl contamination. Cartels mix fentanyl into meth for several reasons. It's cheap, fentanyl is synthetic and inexpensive to produce. It increases addiction, users develop dual dependence. And it creates repeat customers. People come back because the high is more intense. But it's killing users at unprecedented rates. And naloxone, the opioid overdose reversal drug, only works on the fentanyl component. It won't counteract the meth. So even if you reverse the opioid overdose, the person still has toxic levels of methamphetamine in their system. The treatment infrastructure for meth addiction is inadequate. Unlike opioid addiction, there's no medication-assisted treatment for meth. There's no methadone or buprenorphine equivalent. The only treatment is behavioral therapy and abstinence. That doesn't work well. Relapse rates for meth addiction are over 80%. Most users quit and relapse multiple times before achieving sustained sobriety. And with increasing purity and fentanyl contamination, each relapse is more likely to be fatal. Rural areas have even fewer treatment resources. Most addiction treatment centers are in urban areas. Rural users have to travel hours for treatment. Many have no transportation. Many have no insurance. The treatment gap is enormous. The result, Millions of Americans addicted to methamphetamine with minimal access to effective treatment. The problem is growing faster than the response. Here's the geopolitical reality. America cannot stop the methamphetamine supply. Mexican cartels have industrialized production. They manufacture in massive quantities in Mexico. They smuggle it across the border through thousands of routes. They distribute it through established networks across the United States. Interdiction doesn't work. The DEA seizes tons of methamphetamine every year. Doesn't matter. Cartels produce so much that seizures are just cost of business. They factor losses into pricing. As long as demand exists, supply will continue. The Combat Methamphetamine Epidemic Act of 2005 restricted pseudoephedrine, but didn't reduce meth availability. Cartels just switched production methods. Every attempt to restrict precursor chemicals results in cartels finding new synthesis routes. The US government knows this. Internal DEA reports acknowledge that supply-side interdiction cannot solve the meth epidemic. The problem is demand, not supply. As long as millions of Americans want methamphetamine, cartels will supply it. But addressing demand requires massive investment in treatment, economic development in rural areas, and social support systems. That costs money. That requires political will. That demands acknowledging that the war on drugs failed. So instead, we continue arresting users, seizing shipments, and watching the death toll rise. We criminalize addiction instead of treating it. We incarcerate users instead of rehabilitating them. And the cartels keep producing meth because the market keeps growing. The Nazi superdrug that was supposed to create invincible soldiers is now destroying American communities at a scale that would have shocked Hitler's physicians. Methamphetamine was designed for military superiority. It was supposed to increase productivity and eliminate weakness. Nazi Germany believed it would create an unstoppable army. Instead, it created mass addiction, psychosis, and societal collapse. German soldiers became paranoid and erratic. Hitler's drug-fueled decisions contributed to military disasters. The Japanese meth epidemic after World War II nearly destroyed a generation. And now the same drug is devastating rural America. It's killing 32,000 Americans per year. It's destroying families. It's overwhelming foster care systems. It's creating permanent brain damage in millions of users. The complete history of methamphetamine is the history of a drug designed to enhance human performance that ended up destroying human potential. It promised productivity and delivered addiction. It promised strength and delivered psychosis. It promised victory and delivered collapse. Nazi Germany thought meth would make them conquer the world. Instead, it made Hitler insane, German soldiers addicted, and left a legacy of global addiction that kills tens of thousands per year. Mexican cartels produce methamphetamine at pharmaceutical quality and industrial scale. American communities are saturated with cheap, pure meth laced with fentanyl. Rural areas are devastated. Treatment systems are overwhelmed, and the death toll keeps rising. This isn't a drug epidemic that's peaking. This is an epidemic that's accelerating. Meth overdose deaths have tripled in less than a decade. Purity has increased from 40% to 95%. Fentanyl contamination has made every dose potentially lethal. And cartels show no signs of slowing production. The Nazi drug experiment didn't end with World War II. It metastasized. It spread globally. It evolved into a more potent, more addictive, more deadly form. And now it's winning. That's the complete history of methamphetamine, the Nazi super soldier drug that became a global epidemic, the chemical designed to eliminate weakness that created the most devastating addiction crisis in modern American history. Hitler's drug legacy didn't die in the bunker. It just went to Mexico, got industrialized, and came to rural America. 32,000 dead per year and rising. No effective treatment, no way to stop supply, no political will to address demand. The Nazi drug is destroying America, and we're letting it happen. That's methamphetamine, legal Nazi military stimulant, turned illegal cartel product, designed for soldiers, destroying civilians, created to enhance performance, causing brain damage instead. And it's only getting worse.